Hi, I'm going to read you a story. Beaver Face. Once there was a large village on the edge of a dense grain forest. There were many children in the village. They often played around the houses and along the shore. They built toy canoes, they skipped rocks across the water, they gathered seashells. But they never wandered into the forest, for they knew it was a scary place where mysterious things happened and supernatural beings lived. One of the children was a special little girl. When she was born, her parents discovered that her upper lip had not grown together properly. It was divided under her nose, so that her teeth showed through the cleft. Because she looked different, some of the children were cruel to her. They called her Beaver Face. But Beaver Face was a brave and clever girl. She chose to ignore their taunts. In fact, she was so full of goodwill and laughter that many of the other children respected her as a good friend. One day the children were playing near the edge of the forest, and suddenly a child pointed into the darkness of the trees and screamed, "Something is there! It is huge, with big eyes, and it is watching us!" The frightened children flew like a flock of birds down the path to the village and to safety. When the parents heard about the awful being in the woods, they thought the children were joking. "Do not be afraid. Go back and play. Nothing will harm you, as long as you do not go into the forest." The children returned to their play, but this time they were not quite so near the trees as before. They were cautious and watchful for a while, but then, children being children, they forgot their fear and drew nearer and nearer into the forest. Suddenly a dark figure, twice as tall as a man, crashed out of the brush. Its body was covered with shaggy black fur. It had long arms, huge feet, and wild glaring eyes. The children knew immediately from the stories the elders had told them that this was Tanaskwa, the timber giant, the devourer of children. On her back, the fearsome Tanaskwa carried a large burden basket. Quickly, she began snatching up the children, just like picking berries from a bush. She rubbed pitch on their eyes and tossed each of them over her shoulder into the basket. One after another, Tanaskwa caught the children. The last was Beaver Face. As the frightened children bumped along in the basket, they could see nothing. They could only feel the motion of the creature as it lumbered with great strides deeper and deeper into the forest. The children wept with fear, all except Beaver Face, who kept her wits about her and began to plan a way out of this difficulty. In a little work basket that was always tied to her belt, Beaver Face found a ball of mountain goat fat. She put it into her mouth and chewed it until it became very soft. Then she rubbed the fat on her eyes and easily wiped away the pitch. She smeared fat on the eyes of the other children, and they too were able to wipe away the pitch and see again. Then Beaver Face took out a small mussel-shell knife and began to cut at the bottom of the basket. At last, she made a hole big enough for the children to squeeze through. Beaver Face let the children down through the hole one by one, so they could drop quietly to the ground. To each one she whispered, "Run to the village. Tell the warriors to arm themselves and follow the trail of this monster." The last child escaped, and only Beaver Face remained in the basket. She had saved the others, but now she was alone with this horrible creature. Suddenly, Tanaskwa stopped and slipped the basket from her back. The creature peered inside and saw that the basket was empty, except for one small child. "Arg!" cried the enraged Tanaskwa. "Are you the one responsible for losing my dinner? Was it you who ruined my basket?" "Yes," said the brave little Beaver Face. "I am the one. You can blame me." "And so I will," said Tanaskwa. "You are not very fat, and you will not make much of a meal, but I will eat you for a snack anyway." "Eat me if you must," said Beaver Face. "At least my friends are back safely in the village." "No one is safe from me. I am the timber giant," roared Tanaskwa in anger. "Well, that may be," replied Beaver Face, "but you only have me to eat. The others have escaped." At that moment, Tanaskwa noticed the beautiful abalone shell earrings in Beaver Face's ears. They sparkled like the sun on deep seawater. Tanaskwa loved bright shiny ornaments, so she said, "I want a pair of earrings like yours. Then I will be beautiful." Beaver Face could hardly keep from laughing, for she knew that even the most wonderful earrings would never make this horrible creature look beautiful. Then Beaver Face had an idea. "If you let me go, I will give you my earrings," said the quick-witted Beaver Face. "Why should I do that?" asked Tanaskwa. "I'll have your earrings after I eat you anyway." Beaver Face replied quickly, "Yes, you will have my earrings, but without holes in your ears, you cannot wear them." "Well, that is right," said Tenoskwa. "So before I eat you, you will pierce my ears." "Well, I will need a sharp stake and a stone maul," said Beaver Face. "Very well," said Tenoskwa impatiently. "My house is nearby, and I will find the tools you need." Tenoskwa plucked up little Beaver Face and, in a dozen swift strides, arrived at the great house deep in the forest. As she went inside, Tenoskwa clutched Beaver Face tightly in her big, ugly hand. The little girl stared around the gloomy room in amazement. There were riches piled from floor to ceiling. There were shining coppers, mountain goat skins, soft sea otter and ermine pelts, abalone shells, and woolen blankets. "This should do nicely," said Tenoskwa gruffly as she stooped to pick up a sharp stake and stone maul from the floor. "Oh, yes," replied Beaver Face eagerly. "I can pierce your ears, and then you can eat me." "Oh, yes," replied Beaver Face. "Oh, rest assured that I will eat you," said Tenoskwa, with a glimmer in her eye. "But first you must put me down," said Beaver Face. "Then you must lie down so I can reach your ears." Tenoskwa, who was very hungry by now and quite anxious to wear the earrings, quickly stretched out on the dirt floor of the house. "I must drive this stake through your ear to make a hole," said Beaver Face. "It may hurt a little." "Nothing hurts me," bragged Tenoskwa. "I'm not afraid of anything. Make the hole." The clever Beaver Face drove the stake through the lower part of Tenoskwa's ear and deep into the dirt. "I need another stake," said Beaver Face. "Get one from the fire pit and hurry," growled Tenoskwa. Beaver Face grabbed the second stake and pounded it through Tenoskwa's other earlobe, firmly anchoring the stake in the ground. Now the great Tenoskwa was pinned to the ground by her ears. Beaver Face scampered to the head of Tenoskwa. With all her might, she struck the creature on the forehead with the stone maul. The timber giant was dead. Just then, warriors from the village arrived, followed by all the mothers and grandmothers and barking dogs. "How did this creature get in this position?" asked Beaver Face's father. "I did it," said Beaver Face proudly. "I drove the stakes into Tenoskwa's ears, pinned her to the ground, and killed her." The villagers could not believe such a tiny child could kill the timber giant, but there was no one else who could have done it. It had to have been Beaver Face. The villagers rejoiced. They began to gather the great bundles and valuable blankets and furs to take back to the village. Only the father of Beaver Face refused to take any wealth from the house of Tenoskwa. He held his daughter up for all to see and said, "You are brighter than the sun and wise beyond your years. You saved the children. You killed the monster, and it will never come back." "Do not be so sure," said Beaver Face. "Tenoskwa has great power. Perhaps we should go quickly and leave the creature and the house." But even as Beaver Face spoke, the villagers set the house afire. Flames and black clouds of smoke roared into the sky. Soon only ashes remained. The villagers began to kick at the ashes. As the ashes flew into the air, a thundering voice rose from the earth. "Though you burn me, I will bite you. Though you burn me, I will drink your blood." With that, the ashes turned into mosquitoes and black flies and hornets and all the stinging pests that plague human beings to this day. And what became of Beaver Face? No one ever called her by that name again. She became called Bright as the Sun, a high-ranking woman in the village, and she lived a long and happy life. See you next Wednesday.